the Cover 2 podcast. My name is Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And today we have a very packed show for you today. The NFL is finally done, so we're not even talking about the Super Bowl anymore or the playoffs and that stuff. We're diving into some baseball and basketball topics, kind of transitioning to the next season of sports. Obviously, Jared, my Los Angeles Dodgers made a big trade. Kind of got some good players, right?
Kind of got some
good players, right?
You mean got a very good all-star top 5 player in the league?
Maybe.
Okay, all right.
It also got one of the better pitchers in recent memory, all for a couple of prospects. We're also going to be talking about how the Angels completely backed off of a deal that would have definitely helped them, and the Dodgers didn't mind giving up players. We'll get into that. Definitely, I know Jerry has some opinions on that. And then we'll jump into basketball's trade deadline, specifically the Clippers and Lakers. Clippers getting Marcus Morris, the Lakers getting absolutely nobody and not signing anybody yet either. And at the very end of the podcast, we're going to give our short and quick opinions on the news that Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns, you remember him as the guy that hit the quarterback over the head with his helmet. He just got reinstated after only what ended up being a 6-game suspension. But Jared, let's talk about some good news, and that is Mookie Betts and David Price coming to the Los Angeles Dodgers. What's funny is I believe we recorded, it was either last Tuesday or last Wednesday, and right after we were done, it came out that this trade was happening.
Yeah.
A lot of weird stuff happened, and finally, 2 nights ago, it was finally officially announced that Mookie Betts and David Price actually will be getting introduced at Dodger Stadium right after this podcast is done. At least
that's today. They're
yeah. So it's
today.
Official. Dodgers also getting a reliever in a deal for Kenta Maeda. So a lot went down. So real quick before we get into the Angels and the lack of the Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling going to them, give me your opinions, your unbiased opinions first on what this means for the Dodgers. Does it mean they're the best team in the league now? And do you believe this was the right thing to do?
I definitely think it was the right thing to do, and I think you mentioned that at the top of the show when you were talking about what we were going to discuss today. The fact that the Dodgers got Mookie Betts, who is arguably, I don't even think arguably, I think he is no doubt a top 5 player in all of Major League Baseball. He is athletically gifted, a great fielder. He can hit for power, right? We've seen that when he was hitting at Fenway for the Boston Red Sox. And here's the thing, the Dodgers didn't necessarily need another bat because you have Bellinger and you have all these other stars and weapons on this team. So this was just a luxury in a sense, right, for them to get that. Not to mention they get David Price, who is a veteran, won a World Series before. Obviously, he's had an up and down career, but I would say the one thing that the Dodgers did need was more consistent pitching. Mm-hmm. So maybe in a new scenario, different city, maybe this can work out for David Price. And the fact that he doesn't have to be that number 1 star, that number 1 ace they have, Walker Buehler. Obviously, they have some other great pitching pieces around them. So maybe the fact that this takes some pressure off of Mookie Betts and off of David Price, something that I don't think people are talking about necessarily. We understand that they're going to contribute and they're going to be major pieces of this team, but they don't have to be the guys, right? Maybe like they had to be in Boston. So, I'm not trying to say that they're not going to do well, but they don't have that added pressure of if they don't perform, their team isn't going to do well. Mm-hmm. Because if some nights they don't perform, guess what? You've got Bellinger, you've got Walker Buehler, you have other pieces around you that can kind of step up and take the place. So every night it could be a different guy leading the charge and leading the team, and I think that could be the scariest thing for this Dodgers organization. If they can stay healthy, yes, I agree, or I feel that this team is all around the most talented and best team in all Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of unprecedented. And Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers president of baseball operations, who's also serving as the GM and a lot of other roles for the team, came out and said this is by far and probably will be the best player. Speaking of Mookie Betts, that I will have ever traded for, and that's a big. That's big for a GM and a guy that's been around baseball and a guy that's had a lot of success. For him to say something like that, and he's not totally wrong. I mean, how often, especially right before spring training, does an all-star player, one of the best players in the league in Mookie Betts, at least one of the best hitters, get traded to a team that already you could have penciled in potentially to be in the World Series already. It's
they're in the last two.
Yeah, it's kind of like an embarrassment of riches almost. I wouldn't say, a la Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors, but like it is kind of insane with the players that they traded for Mookie Betts and David Price that the Dodgers are going to be so much better than they were last year already. And going into this year, they were already, tabbed to be one of the best teams in the National League. It really is crazy, and it shows that, when you go and try to do things, you can a lot of times stuff will work out. Mookie Betts had a down year compared to his MVP year last year. So not everything is perfect coming over. It's not like Betts won the MVP last year. And David Price, like you mentioned, has had his struggles in the playoffs. Besides, funny enough, against the Dodgers in the World Series, where he pitched amazing and was one of the best players in that series. But it's better than what they had prior to the trade. And what they essentially, with the two trades that went down with Minnesota and the Boston Red Sox, the Dodgers have now essentially traded, they've essentially swapped Kenta Maeda and Alex Verdugo for a reliever that throws 100 miles an hour and Brusador Gratterol. David Price, who's going to slot in as a number 3, number 2, number 4.
Do you think he takes over Hyun-Jin Roo's?
Well, yeah, essentially, yeah, exactly. So,
right.
I guess you could say that.
It's kind of a swap.
I hadn't thought of that, so I'm very glad you brought that up. So, yeah, if you look at the whole offseason, right, you kind of swap David Price with Hyun-Jin Ryu. Okay, Ryu was great last year. I believe was extremely close to winning the Cy Young, correct? He didn't win the Cy Young, did he?
He didn't win.
He didn't win the Cy Young, you're right. So you switch David Price with Hyun-Jin Ryu. You switch Kenta Maeda for a guy that throws 100 miles an hour, and Alex Verdugo for Mookie Betts. Now there's a couple other prospects that have gone the other way. Jeter Downs, who is one of the Dodgers' top prospects.
Named after Derek Jeter.
Yeah, and a couple of other players.
Who now plays for the Red Sox.
Exactly, yeah.
Pretty
interesting. Funny note there. But when you look at it that way, I think the Dodgers are one of the teams that won the offseason for the MLB.
They did, and you combine that with the fact, and we're just talking about Major League Baseball as a whole, and the best teams that we see so far going into spring training. You see that the Houston Astros, they obviously took a major hit. They lost one of the best pitchers in the league, right? Who went to the Yankees. I would argue that the Dodgers and the Yankees probably have a 1A and 1B for best rosters all around in baseball, right? But I think because the Astros lost their manager, lost some players in free agency, I think they took a step back, which kind of elevates the Yankees and the Dodgers right there. And this is, early predictions, but it kind of gets exciting when you can possibly think about having an LA Dodgers, New York Yankees, West Coast, East Coast World Series. I know a lot of people would be excited about that. I think Major League Baseball as a whole would be excited about that because, and this is for all sports, when you have organizations that are in major cities, right? When you've got the New York Knicks and the LA Lakers and the Dallas Cowboys, right? The major cities, when those teams are doing well, it elevates the sport as a whole. So when you have the LA Dodgers on the West Coast and the New York Yankees on the East Coast, when they're both doing well, I think it makes baseball better as a whole. More people are excited, more people are watching it. So arguably, you've got the best two teams right there. And right now, I think they're both the early favorites to make it to the World Series because of their rosters and the moves that they've made in free agency this year.
Yeah, no, and we can do the whole back and forth with the Yankees. I know I kind of jokingly put on Twitter to a couple of people that I knew would be super biased towards their teams. And
you included.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I did that was because it is extremely hard, and it kind of is. It is hard to say who has the better team right now. Obviously, the Yankees got Garrett Cole, but the Dodgers got Mookie Betts. And when you look at it, Garrett Cole probably will mean something a little bit more come the playoffs. But Mookie Betts coming to the Dodgers along with David Price, that kind of evens it out, or maybe even puts it in favor of the Dodgers. They already have Walker Buehler. They already have Clayton Kershaw, at least for the regular season. We know his playoff struggles, so I'm not going to sit here and say that he's one of these guys that I just expect to dominate the postseason. The rotations are now very close. The Yankees, obviously, with Masahiro Tanaka and Luis Severino, who've had success in the playoffs as well. So, and then the lineups are essentially tied. I mean, it's almost impossible to say one or the other is better. So it is really amazing that we're looking at a situation here where two of the most popular organizations in the league are supposed to get to the World Series. Whereas, and I think I'm looking. I want to see the ratings really quickly the last couple of years, because you mentioned the.
I believe for the last 7 years, the ratings for Major League Baseball have declined.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
and so there is a major need, and I think Robert Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and owners around the league are, I think, kind of hoping and praying that we have two teams from major cities that can come to the World Series and elevate not only ratings, but just the popularity of the sport, right? You see the NFL, you see the NBA, they are so popular and recognizable, not just in the States, but around the world. And even though baseball is very much a cultured sport and you've got players from all around the world, I think right now, baseball is nowhere near tops as far as popularity when it comes to the major sports.
No, it's not. Interesting enough, though, with the Cubs being in the World Series, their rating was actually one of the highest one, I believe, since 2004, which was the Red Sox.
Wow, 2004.
Yeah, exactly, which is the same exact thing with the Red Sox winning the World Series for the first time. Yeah,
right.
So that was great ratings. The Dodgers and Houston Astros had great ratings when they played, and then Dodgers Red Sox. It was lower, and then last year was even lower than those. So yeah, with the Dodgers at least not being in it, or the Cubs or the Red Sox, the ratings are a little bit lower. So Dodgers World Series, I would expect to jump up near that Cubs range, to be honest.
Right, and just for those who may be tuning in right now, we're not trying to predict anything. We're just saying based on the rosters that the Dodgers have with the trades that they just made for Mookie Betts, and I just threw in the Yankees because they got Garrett Cole. And because they were, so close last year, it feels like if these two teams can stay relatively healthy throughout the year, they don't have major injuries that set them back, you almost just feel like both of these teams are destined to be in the World Series.
No, yeah, and you wouldn't have said that if the Dodgers hadn't made this trade. You would have said, okay, the Yankees probably in the AL, right? Houston still has a great roster. I personally feel like this scandal is going to affect them, and they're not going to be the team they have been the last couple of years just because of that. Especially in the beginning of the season, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to play a lot better than they will. But now with this trade, and the Dodgers essentially adding, two great players for a couple prospects that aren't going to play next year, or at least weren't going to have the same effect, they just kind of jump up immediately. It's almost like they signed free agents right before spring training. Right. So it is super interesting. Now, one thing. Jared, what are your thoughts on the fact that Mookie Betts is going to be a free agent after this year? Do you think that this was a smart move for the Dodgers to give up two top prospects, essentially just for potentially a rental?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And there's one reason why. That's because the last 2 years, the Dodgers have made it to the World Series, but are 0-2. They have zero. They have
made it last year.
Okay, I'm sorry. Last 2 out of 3 years. I'm sorry. But the Dodgers have 0 rings to show for their World Series appearances, which means I feel like if you're a Dodgers team, you are desperate to get back, number one. And number two, yes, Alex Verdugo is an up-and-coming prospect and could potentially be a star one day, but the key word is could be a star, right? It's not like he has evolved and he is there. So to trade away up-and-coming prospects for a proven, well-known top 5 player in the league, yes, you do. And guess what? If you're the Dodgers, you smoosh him all year long. He's in LA, La La Land. The weather is great, right? You do whatever you can to make this 1 year experience the best that it can be. And if you can win a World Series and put a cherry on top, that's even better. And then what you do in the offseason is you negotiate and you do what the Dodgers do best. You say, this could be your home for the next 5 or 10 years here in LA, right? There's not many places better than LA as far as weather and just living and all of that many people would want to be, right? So it's a major city. You're going to get the exposure not only with playing baseball. I think a lot of athletes in today's world want more than just the sport to kind of, they want the brand, right? What else am I going to do? Are they going to get marketing? Are they going to get commercials? Are they going to be able to invest in other things like technology, right? There's athletes are looking more than just the sport to make money. They're looking for other avenues to grow their brand and their business for years beyond baseball and years beyond their athletic career. So like I said, LA is a great place to do that. And if the Dodgers can win a World Series and make him feel at home, then hey, I think there's a great chance that he stays. But if they don't, even if they do win a World Series, I think that's a win because they're desperate and because, like I said, they have 0 rings to show for their 2 most recent World Series appearances.
Yes, and I think the Dodgers, obviously, best case scenario would be winning the World Series, something that Betts did against the Dodgers 2 years in a row. And I think one of the reasons they made this trade is because, and they did this with Manny Machado, and they've done this with players in the past, at least this current Dodgers organizational, this front office, right? It was a little bit different 6-7 years ago with Frank McCourt and all them. Ever since Magic Johnson and company came on, it's been different. What they do is a lot of times they would rather trade a prospect and the risk reward of having that guy infiltrated with the players, infiltrated with the organization, seeing that the Dodgers have some of the best fans in the league, where they sell out a lot of just random Tuesday night games. And now Betts will get a full year of that. I fully believe that the Dodgers were going to try to get Mookie Betts in next offseason's free agency anyways. So what they're saying is, okay, we were going to go after you anyways.
So now we get you a year early.
Might as well, you could play for the organization, the ultimate tryout, the ultimate free agent pitch, right? Let's say we win a World Series. How the hell are you not going to sign back with us, right? Maybe you like Boston, now we get it. But if we're showing you we're willing to throw down the money, why not stick with this group of players?
Right, and also the fact that they gave up prospects. If they, if Boston was asking for Walker Buehler or some other, you know what I mean. But the fact that they didn't have to, and this is no disrespect to Alex Verdugo or Jeter Downs, but the fact that they did not have to give up major players who have already proven themselves, I think that just makes this trade even sweeter for the Dodgers. And really for Boston, right? If you're listening to the show right now and you're saying, well, why would Boston do that? Why would Boston give up a top 5 player for players in return that are not proven? And I think the major reason for that is Boston wanted to get under the luxury tax, right? They did not want to have to pay penalties for being over the luxury tax. And in Major League Baseball, I don't know the exact number, maybe Nick, you can expand on it, but if you are above the luxury tax, there are substantial fines that teams as an organization have to pay for. So if you were under that luxury tax, then you're golden. But you're talking millions and millions of dollars for being just maybe $500,000 or $1 million over that luxury tax. So to shed that money of David Price and Mookie Betts, that from a money standpoint, it was a win for the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, and what's actually kind of funny is someone brought this up on Twitter. I can't remember who it was. They said that the Red Sox essentially shedded the Mookie Betts contract to go re-sign Mookie Betts a year later. There's the potential that actually could still happen. And then because they got they're now going to be under the luxury tax, they now could essentially sign Mookie Betts again after this season, and their penalty, their luxury tax penalty, would not have been even close to what it would have been if they would just sign Mookie Betts without getting rid of David Price and without originally having gone under before this season started.
That's okay. Yeah, so we're going to say, hey, we're going to let you go for a year, potentially win a World Series with the other team, and then we're going to try to bring you back into another.
Yeah, no, because for example, I forget exactly what Mookie Betts' contract is this year, but it's somewhere in the 20 millions for just this year based on arbitration and stuff like that. And currently their contract situation is it looks like their luxury tax payroll is $191 million. They actually have, after this trade, they now have $16 million of space. They are not paying a luxury tax penalty this year, which they would have been if they had these two guys on their roster.
Right.
And for example, the Dodgers now are just, they're over the luxury tax. They're only paying a $2 million fine. The Yankees paying $21 million fine.
But hey, if you win the World Series, I'm sure both of those organizations would say, we will gladly pay that luxury tax.
So the Red Sox now will start over, and no matter really what they do next season, in the offseason, if they go over luxury tax, it will only be a couple million worth of penalty, which is not as bad as $20 million here for the Yankees that we're looking at right here. So, the Yankees, that's their thing. We know that they love to go over the luxury tax and just pay for all the money, and their team is great. And it's essentially the same thing as the Dodgers, who are going over the luxury tax a little bit, just have a lot of young contracts that they haven't paid yet and stuff like that. All right, we need to switch topics, kind of. In this deal, there was a lot of rumors going around. It essentially took almost a full week to get this deal done. But what was originally reported right after we recorded our last podcast was that Mookie Betts was still going to come to the Dodgers, and David Price was going to come to the Dodgers, and Verdugo was going to go to the Red Sox, and the Twins were going to be involved, and Kenta Maeda, and this reliever, Bruce Guerrero. And then there was also a second trade that had nothing to do with any of that. That was the Dodgers essentially shedding luxury tax contract money, Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling, going to the Angels.
Right. It's right down the 405.
Right down the 405. It would have been easy for Stripling and Joc Pederson to kind of mold into that team.
Would have even had to move homes, right?
Yeah, technically you wouldn't have, or at least you wouldn't have to move, states at all, move cities, so you could just move down the street. That is now not happening and will not happen because apparently Arte Moreno, the owner of the Los Angeles Angels, decided that he got disrespected because the trades got leaked before they actually happened. And now, yesterday, Tuesday, Andrew Friedman, president of baseball operations for the Dodgers, came out and said that Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling are going to be a part of a 2020 Dodgers roster, and there is no deal in place with the Angels, and they are not speaking to the Angels anymore about this deal. So, Jared, as the resident Angel fan here, what are your thoughts on the fact that essentially this deal isn't happening because Arte Moreno's feeling this guy?
I'm at this point, I'm not even surprised anymore. And Arte Moreno, this just shows how thin-skinned this guy is, right? The fact that this potential deal got leaked to the media, and then the media converted it into a major story, and this was actually reported on ESPN and many other very credible news outlets that this trade was going to happen between the Dodgers and the Angels, right? And the fact that it is now not happening basically because Arte Moreno got his feelings hurt and he feels he was disrespected. I don't even have words, and I can't express what I really want to say because we're going to keep this PG. So basically what this is Arte Moreno is letting his ego get in the way of making his team better to potentially contend to, I don't even want to say win the World Series. Let's just start with getting into the playoffs, right? Let's start with the fact that you have the best player in all of Major League Baseball that is hands down, no question, in Mike Trout. I think everyone can agree with that, no matter absolutely. Which team you root for, right? You are, in a sense, wasting Mike Trout's greatest years right now because this organization has not been able to put a great roster around Mike Trout, right? This isn't basketball where you have one superstar and they can change the entire culture and the entire winning perspective of your organization, like a LeBron James, right? In Major League Baseball, you need a multitude of players, pitching and hitting, in order to be successful as a team. Mike Trout does a lot for your team, but if you don't have other complementary hitters around you, and if you don't have the pitching to go with it, you're not going to do well. AKA what the Angels have been for the last 5 or 6 years, right? I think they're very lucky that Mike Trout is, such a loyal guy, and he was willing to re-sign with the Angels. Because if I was Mike Trout, I would look at this organization and say, okay, in the next 3 to 5 years, where is this team going? Are they trending upward or downward? The fact that you have Arte Moreno, who is not willing to go out and make the necessary choices and the right decisions to better this team, if I was Mike Trout, I would have left. And I know I'm getting a little bit off track. Basically what I'm saying is I feel that Arte Moreno is hindering this organization and holding them back from making the right choices. So instead of going out and getting solid pitching, right? You don't have to always get a superstar or an all-star pitcher, but get guys that can contribute in a way that can help your organization. But the fact that he is not willing to do that, he would rather go out and give a ridiculous contract to Josh Hamilton and give a ridiculous contract to Albert Pujols, who, yes, Albert Pujols has still been able to play, but he has not lived up to his ridiculous contract that he's had, right? He would rather go out and get these crazy super name stars who are past their prime in order to fill seats in the stands, as opposed to getting quality players that can actually help you win a World Series. And in a sense, that would put seats in the stands, right? I think they're going about this completely wrong. And I think in the end, Arte Moreno's ego has gotten in the way of their success.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up attendance. Just to make a point about that, we lived in Orange County our whole lives. The Angels' attendance was better back in the day. I can remember essentially from when they were in the World Series in 2002 to around 2009, 2010. You go to an Angel game on Tuesday or Wednesday night, it's going to be a good crowd.
Right.
It's going to be a good crowd. People are going to be excited, and you expect the Angels win, right? Really ever since, what's kind of crazy is Mike Trout joined the team, the attendance is lower. And naturally, attendance is lower in the MLB
as a whole,
but specifically with the Angels, it's become extremely easy to get tickets. The crowds aren't into it. You know what I'm saying? And when you go to, for example, when you go to a Dodger game, it's back to kind of what it used to be with the Angels.
Right. With the Angels, you can get tickets like day up. I mean, you don't have to get tickets.
What's the big difference between those two teams? The Dodgers make the playoffs every single year and are good. The Angels do not.
Right.
And what was happening back then, the Angels were making the playoffs every single year, and they were good. So, signing these guys does not make it people go in the seats.
Right.
It's winning with those guys, right?
It doesn't take a genius. We are sitting here. We have no actual relation to the Angels organization, but it does not take a genius to understand how to build a roster. And by winning, not only brings success, but it also wants to bring fans to the games. Because if I'm a fan, I am an Angels fan. But why would I want to pay money to go see a team not perform on the field when I can sit on my own couch, not spend a dime, and watch them on my 60-inch flat screen TV?
Yeah, 100%. Now, getting back to the actual, what went wrong with this trade, you're right. Arte Moreno, the feelings getting hurt thing is ridiculous, to be honest. It's a business, and a lot of owners complain about players complaining about that kind of stuff, and it's kind of funny to see it.
A little hypocritical.
But here's the thing. Yes, the Angels don't necessarily need Joc Pederson, right? They already have a lineup filled with Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, Justin Upton, Albert Pujols, Win Healthy, Shohei Ohtani, Tommy La Stella, who was an All-Star last year, Andrelton Simmons. It's actually one of the best lineups in baseball.
It's a good lineup.
Yeah. So you add Joc Pederson in the place of a Brian Goodwin. Yes, that's an upgrade, but you don't really need that. What the Angels needed, though, was Ross Stripling. Ross Stripling has made an All-Star team before, essentially pitching for half a season. He was that good for half a season. The one time the Dodgers gave him a chance to be a starter and not a reliever, he was an All-Star, right? The Angels, right now, after we just found out that Shohei Ohtani is not going to pitch till May, starting the season, do not have a single pitcher that last year had an ERA below 3.9. Okay? I think the Dodgers had 3 guys that were below.
By the way, that's not good. That's not a good thing, right? Many people think, 3.9. No, that's
you
not
want
good.
an ERA 3.5 or below, essentially, around there. Think about it like the exact opposite terms of a GPA, right? You want a lower GPA to be the better. Yeah. Okay. So essentially, they have 4 guys. Ross Stripling potentially was the #1 pitcher.
Yeah, right now, I'm looking at the roster, and they're gonna roll out a starting lineup, pitching wise, of Andrew Heaney, and then no in particular order: Andrew Heaney, Julio Teheran, Griffin Canning, Dylan Bundy.
Yeah, Bundy's never proven himself. Griffin Canning hasn't proven himself. Andrew Heaney, even with more evidence, has not proved himself. And Julio Teheran is on the backswing of his career. Was better in 2014, 2015.
None of those pitchers would, in my opinion, scare any other organization.
Nope.
Right?
Think about when the Yankees come in town. Do you think?
Lord.
Now, that's obviously the most extreme example. But, are any of these pitchers going to stop that lineup?
Good Lord.
How about the Houston Astros?
They're going to give up 8 runs.
How about the Houston Astros without cheating? You think they're coming in scared of Julio Teheran and Andrew Heaney? No. Ross Stripling, there's a little bit of we got to be prepared for this guy.
Well, and
we're not saying extreme.
We're not saying he would have been the saving grace.
No,
but it would have been a start to. He would have been a solid piece. That
Absolutely.
Maybe he's the #1 for right now. You get Shohei Ohtani back. Maybe he becomes #1. And if you're contending around the All-Star break, you make a move to get a true All-Star #1 ace, and then you potentially have that person. This is obviously all speculation, but you have a true #1 ace, Shohei Ohtani, Ross Stripling. And then you've got Andrew Heaney and Griffin Canning to be the 4th and 5th guys, right? That seems a lot more reasonable and a lot better situation than having to roll out the starting 4 or starting 5 that we just mentioned.
The last couple of years, too, the Angels' #1 guys have been awful. Except for Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani showed a legitimate number one potential all-star pitching potential. But he's coming off Tommy John surgery, so we don't know. Ross Stripling has not essentially had a bad year in the major leagues yet, and would have been coming in, let's say, as the potential number one, as the best number one they've had, at least in the last couple years. So it would have been an upgrade, essentially because the Dodgers needed this salary done. Right? It would have been just like, we saw a trade in the NBA where Andre Drummond got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, essentially as its salary dump. Okay, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, I know you're having a terrible year, but it's like, we just got this guy for free, essentially. Like, let's at least, try to win some games and try to build something around this. That's what the Angels could have done here, and then you add Joc Pederson to a lineup that was already good. You're looking at the Angels as a potential wildcard team at that point.
Well, I think you brought up a great point with the injury factor, especially to Shohei Ohtani. And I think that's the one thing with the Angels pitchers. It's not just all about their play. They have unfortunately been injury prone for the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's like clockwork, right? Within the first 2 to 3 months of the season, you have the Angels starting 1 and 2 pitchers who have just gone down with injuries, right? So for various reasons. And it seems like the Angels don't have a contingency plan in order to be prepared for that. It's almost just like, we're going to rely on our farm system, or we're just going to bring up the next guy. Well, guess what? That hasn't worked, and it's been multiple years, okay? So when you've gone 2, 3, 4 years with having the same injuries to your same starting pitchers, and yet you don't seem to want to do anything about it, right? That is just it's stupid, is what it is, to not have a contingency plan, to want to bring in other guys, whether they are just backups or for whatever reason, right? They seem to not want to fix their pitching issue, and they seem to want to just try to bring in these high-profile, past their prime, all-star names who do not produce like they used to produce on the field. And it's mind-boggling to me because, like I said, as long as they continue to do this, this Angels team will not be competitive. And like I said, I think the most important part is they are wasting Mike Trout's career right now. The not only best player in Major League Baseball, but arguably one of the best players to ever play the sport. And they're wasting his years right now.
I mean, it's so funny because, it's such a good point you come up with that because, I literally would rather have what Clayton Kershaw has done in the playoffs with some of the disappointment, also with some of the adulation, some of the good games, and not win a World Series, than have what Mike Trout has
done. But guess what? He's at least had the opportunity. He's had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Mike Trout has not even had.
That's what I'm saying.
He's been in the playoffs, I believe, once in his career.
Every single day, I would rather have the Kershaw situation than the Trout situation, even though Kershaw has crushed us multiple times. At least Kershaw has a chance to show us, hey, maybe he isn't the best playoff pitcher. He's still a Hall of Fame pitcher, but Mike Trout has had one playoff series against the eventual World Series champions.
You're asking, in a sense, Mike Trout to hit 100 home runs and 200 RBIs, and it's still, in that sense, they probably wouldn't make the playoffs. It's like, you're asking so much from the guy. Get the guy some help, not from a hitting standpoint, from a pitching standpoint.
Yeah, it sounds kind of backwards, but that's what they need. They have enough hitting. You have Mike Trout. You don't need hitting.
Right.
At that point, you have such a good player on your team that you don't even need to surround him with that.
Because right now, as opposed to the Angels averaging 3-4 runs a game and that being enough to win, the Angels are having to average 5, 6, 7 runs a game. And I'm sorry, but on a consistent night after night, you are not going to get 7 to 8 runs a game, right? So it's just, I don't know. It's like common sense. I don't. Maybe we should just be the GMs of the game. Maybe we need to go down to Angel Stadium and say, hey, Arte Moreno, we need to sit down and have a talk. Yeah. Because this isn't rocket science. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out what needs to happen in this Angels organization. And for whatever reasons, I know we're kind of going on and on. We need to go to the next topic. Yeah. But this Angels team is not making the necessary moves in order to better themselves. Take a page out of what the Dodgers are doing. Take a page out of what the Yankees are doing. Get some damn pitchers in there that can, get you below a 3.5. I almost said GPA because you said GPA. Get you below a 3.5 ERA and get some defense. It's I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just all of this is because Arte Moreno got his feelings hurt. It's not like they just didn't do this. They had the old place.
You know who Arte Moreno is turning into, and it's on a totally different level. James Dolan, the New York Knicks owner, right? The guy is so strong-headed in his own beliefs. He doesn't want to bring other people in. He doesn't want to hear other thoughts. He just wants to do his own thing. And the New York Knicks have not won a championship in 50 years. Right now, I understand the Angels won back in 2002, but that seems like it was 50 years. It might as well be 50 years, right? There's just some owners that just they cannot let their egos go. They cannot push their egos aside and let other people come in to run the operations of their program for the betterment of their team,
Sure.
right? This has nothing to do with, I want to be in control and I want to be in the spotlight. You're the owner. Do whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, if your team is not winning, you are not going to fill seats in the stands.
Nope.
You're going to be losing money, and you're not going to be in contention for winning World Series, which, last time I checked, guys play baseball to win a World Series, right? They're not playing just to, go out and not make the playoffs, or maybe make the playoffs and then go out in the first round. The goal is to win the World Series, right? Last time I checked.
100%.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were on the
It is just kind of crazy how there's two teams in the same city where one is literally has stacked their team beyond belief because they just need to win a World Series, and the Angels are kind of just sitting back yeah, maybe we'll make the playoffs. Maybe we will.
You know what Arte Moreno needs to do? He needs to call the Dodgers.
Change the name, first of all.
Probably. He needs to call the Dodgers with their ownership and their management and say, hey guys, I'm going to put my ego aside. Let me take you out for a nice steak dinner and let's talk. He needs to seriously go and talk to other owners and say, how do you guys do it, right? What are you guys doing that is so successful? Because apparently right now what Arte Moreno has done is not working. And until he kind of puts himself aside and says, I need help, right? I don't think this Angels team is going to go anywhere.
Some of the best players that the Angels have had in their farm system were traded for guys that... Here are the guys they were traded for. Zach Greinke, is he on the Angels?
No.
Mark Teixeira, is he on the Angels?
No.
Josh Hamilton, is he on the Angels? Actually, he was signed.
He was, but no, he is not on the Angels.
No. But you see what I'm saying? You ask the Dodgers, hey, what do you do? Well, they build their farm system so good that they can just give guys away. Mookie Betts.
When the Angels won the World Series in 2002, if I'm not mistaken, they had a top 5 farm system.
Yeah, the Dodgers have a top 5 farm system every single year. The Yankees have a very good farm system. The Houston Astros had a good farm system.
We know. It's most sports in general. Doesn't matter if it's the NFL, baseball. It's copycat leagues, right? A team has success doing one thing, and eventually within a year or two, you see a lot more teams doing that same thing. The Angels just don't seem to get along with that train. They don't get on that bandwagon, right? They're like, we're going to continue to bash our heads into a wall and do our own thing.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep doing that. They're going to keep getting concussions, and eventually they're going to get CTE, and it's not going to be good. And I don't mean to go that extreme, but it's just that's where the Angels are.
They keep doing, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again? Yeah. Also, we saw a video come out today, you actually shared it with me, of Trevor Bauer complaining about the promotion of the game. You can kind of put some blame on Arte Moreno for that, for not promoting, you're not putting the best player in the playoffs every year. That's not the MLB's fault. Yeah. It's Arte Moreno's fault. It's you know what I'm saying? Because he's not, he finally said he was throwing down money this year for Anthony Rendon.
Woo! Yeah.
Wow, Anthony Rendon's going to change he's a great player, but
he's going to change the landscape.
Come on, guys.
Yeah. He's going to be, him and Mike Trout are going to pitch this year too. They're going to be all around. They're going to be Babe Ruth. Yeah, they're going to do whatever.
The Angels have a history of everybody getting hurt on the mound, so they might actually have to get on the mound. Okay, transition, completely different sports. We have to be a little lighter on this topic just because we went over time with the baseball stuff, but the NBA trade deadline went down last week. You had D'Angelo Russell and Wiggins getting swapped between T-Wolves and Warriors, 2 bad teams, right? Like I mentioned, Drummond to the Cavs and salary down, 2 bad teams. The Miami Heat get Andre Iguodala. That's going to be interesting to see, but I don't think that makes them necessarily a contender.
Great defensive piece, good veteran player.
Clint Capella was traded for the Rockets. The Rockets are now going with the high school lineup of guys that are 6'6" and lower. But I think we both agree the biggest trade on this whole trade deadline day was Marcus Morris going to the Los Angeles Clippers. For not that much, right? And I think the biggest story out of this whole trade deadline was the lack of Lakers moves. So Jared, first of all, give me your opinion on Marcus Morris going to the Clippers, how much that's going to help, and then you can dive into your Lakers and what they're playing. What do you think their plan is? Because they didn't do anything.
So I heard an interesting take on the whole trade situation with the Clippers and the Lakers, right? And it basically was from, on paper, the Lakers have more bigger superstars, right? I'm not taking anything away from what the Clippers have with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. They're two of the biggest stars in the game. The Lakers have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They're like moguls. They are their own brand. It's ridiculous. Like, to have those two guys on the same team is almost unheard of, right? It's almost like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. You see organizations building super teams with 2 and 3 stars, but you don't really have these blockbuster superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis on the same team. So what this report was saying was that the Lakers have these superstars on their team, right? And then they have Kyle Kuzma and Alex Caruso and some other good players, but it's like superstars and everyone else. The Clippers, you can argue, have 2 superstars in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and then they have their gap from superstar to the rest of their players isn't as big as the Lakers' gap. Mm-hmm. And the difference with the Clippers, and they described it with a specific adjective, is the Clippers have dogs. And what they meant by that is Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Patrick Beverley, those guys are beasts. They don't back down from any challenge.
I mean, you get the Montrezl Harrell in that.
Montrezl Harrell as well. They don't care if they're guarding LeBron James, James Harden, Zion Williams. They're up for any challenge. They will get in your face. They will talk trash. They don't back down. They're not scared of anyone.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, he wasn't saying that the Lakers were soft, but in a sense, he was. He was basically saying that the Clippers don't care who they're going up against, don't care where they're playing, whether they're playing street ball in the alley or whether they're playing at the Clippers Arena at Staples Center. They will play anytime, anywhere, and they just do not back down from any opponent, right? And I think to have that type of mindset, that mentality, along with Doc Rivers, who's arguably one of the best NBA coaches the league has ever seen. He's won an NBA championship before. He has that championship pedigree. When you combine that coaching with those types of players and that mentality, it's like scary, right? I think it's when you're going up against that, it's a lot to take in. So the Clippers may not have as good of talent as the Lakers, but they've got some dogs that just don't back down from anybody, right? And I think that will come into play in the playoffs when the game slows down, it becomes more defensive, it becomes a bit tougher, it becomes a little more chippy. All of those things kind of play into the Clippers' hands. So the fact that the Clippers got Marcus Morris,
added another one, yeah,
who is known as a dog, a guy that's scrappy, he's feisty, he'll get on the floor, he'll get dirty, right? He does all those little things. It's almost like, man, the Clippers team is scary because they have multiple players that can guard LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And maybe they're not as big, maybe they're not as strong, but their mentality is we're not backing down. We're just going to keep throwing waves and waves and waves at you. So from a mental standpoint, I think the Clippers are a very scary team.
Well, and not to mention, so you talk about Marcus Morris being a dog. He's averaging 20 points.
Right, well, he can shoot.
He won't do that with the Clippers. I doubt
because he doesn't need to.
Yeah, I doubt he has a 30-point game for the Clippers this year. Right? I just say, if you're a betting man, I'm going to go Marcus Morris doesn't have 30 points in a single game for the Clippers. And yeah, because he doesn't need to do that. But yeah, you're like, and he joins, and he's played with Patrick Beverley before. He's played with Montrezl Harrell before, so it's not even like it's a foreign environment as well.
Right.
Hasn't played with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but yeah, they're superstars. You don't have to play for them. You know, they'll treat you with the way they play like you played with them for years, right? With how good those guys are. I do want to comment more on the Lakers because I think it's obvious that the Clippers, improved here in this deal. And all they gave up was Mo Harkless, who was playing the same position as Marcus Morris, averaging way less points, and a first-round pick. And for next year's draft, which they don't need because they're going for a championship. And they have Harrell, who's young. They have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who are in the primes of their careers. They're not going anywhere as far as retiring or anything like that. And so they don't need the first-round picks right now. I want to talk about the Lakers. Because you mentioned not only already was the Lakers team quote-unquote, I'm not coming from me, softer than the Clippers, but then they didn't do a single thing at the trade deadline. And I think this is concerning because I honestly think the Lakers, as much as they don't want to admit it, they're in a head-to-head fight here with the Clippers, okay?
Oh, no doubt.
The Clippers have beat them twice this year. I will keep saying that because it's the truth. I'm not making it up for fandom reasons. They are 2-0 against the Lakers, and they have come from behind to win each game as well. So it's not like the Clippers are blowing them out and there's some fun. Like the Lakers are blowing these games. It's close, right? The Lakers not doing anything, it makes me further think that the Clippers, when they get to the playoffs, it's going to be an easier playoff win for the Clippers. Not as easy as, say, if you play the Pelicans, or if you play the Memphis Grizzlies, or even if you play the Portland Trailblazers. But it just seems like the Clippers are all in for this year, and the Lakers just haven't figured it out yet that you guys need to win this year because the Clippers are primed to win this year, or the Bucks are primed to win this year. And it just seems like the Lakers, they're relying on team chemistry, which can work, but there is just a talent difference there. And that in the NBA, look at the Warriors last couple of years. You can have all the team chemistry you want. The Warriors with that stacked roster were still going to win every single year.
They were.
And they had that chemistry
so
at some
I think the thing too, because I'm not trying to sit here and bash the Lakers,
no.
but I think it's very evident that the Clippers team is a tougher team mentally right now than the Lakers are. The one thing I will say from a Lakers organizational standpoint is they were also in this Marcus Morris potential trade with the Knicks. Yeah. And I think the Knicks were looking at the Lakers roster and saying, hey, the Lakers actually have more to give than the Clippers.
Sure, absolutely.
And it was also reported at one point that the Knicks were asking for not only Kyle Kuzma, who is a kind of a 3-and-wing player. He plays defense. He's long. He's lengthy. He can shoot the three. He's still developing, but in 2 to 3 years, who knows? Maybe he could potentially be an all-star. He's a very solid piece to a roster, right? Also, Alex Caruso, who is like the sixth man. He brings energy. He does a little bit of everything. He's a little white kid, but like he can jump. He dunks. Like he does things that you just wouldn't expect, right? Literally, he looks like a normal guy off the street, and yet he's a basketball player. So he's a great rotational player for the Lakers. And the fact that it was Alex Caruso and Kyle Kuzma that the Knicks were asking for, that was just too much for the Lakers to give up for Marcus Morris. So it's not that the Lakers weren't looking to upgrade their roster, but they would have had to give up too much in return. And the fact that Caruso and Kuzma, I believe, are both under the age of 25, and Marcus Morris is a little bit older. They didn't want to give up that young depth for a guy who may only play a year or two in the league. Now, I think also the Lakers were banking on the fact that they would maybe trade for Andre Iguodala. That obviously didn't happen. The Miami Heat traded for Iguodala. That is done, right?
Yeah, he's on
Their last resort was hoping that they would then sign Darren Collison. He is currently retired, but there was talks that he would be coming out of retirement to come and play for the Lakers or the Clippers. Actually, both of those LA teams were involved. Last week, Darren Collison decided that after showing up to a Lakers game, sitting with Jeannie Buss and some of the other Lakers staffers, he was going to stay retired and not come and play for the Lakers. So it's almost like the Lakers were teetering back and forth with, do we make a trade or do we wait and hope that Darren Collison comes out of retirement? They struck out on both ends. They're left with the roster that they started with. You mentioned they have great chemistry. They have the number 1 seed in the West right now. They have the number two seed in all of the NBA, only behind the Bucks. So they're a great team, but you have to hope that they stay healthy, and you have to hope that their chemistry outweighs, the toughness and physicality of what the Clippers bring and what the Milwaukee Bucks bring if the Lakers were to meet them in the finals.
And like I mentioned, there's just two things when you look at this. It's not like the Lakers have beaten the Clippers twice, and they have that advantage. And I'm going to harp on this too. In the NBA, when there is absorbent talent, that's the word, I think I screwed that word up, but
we'll go with it.
The talent often does just win. And a lot of times team chemistry doesn't get you a win in the NBA. It can work in the NFL, it can work in baseball, it sure as hell can work in hockey. But a lot of times the NBA is a skill game, and when you look at the Warriors, I'm not saying the Clippers are the Warriors, but the Clippers have 5 potential all-stars in this team. The Lakers have 2. And that talent, in my opinion, is now going to win them a series against the Lakers simply because the Lakers just didn't make a move.
Right. Also in the playoffs, and this.
Now, I'll say this too. I do believe LeBron James. There's no way I'm going to say he's worse than anybody in this league.
Oh no!
Right?
He's arguably the
and
MVP
Anthony
right
Davis is great as well. I actually think those 2 guys combined with each other is better than Kawhi Leonard and Paul George.
I do as well.
But like I said, it's not like Kawhi and Paul George are not all-stars too.
They're no scrubs.
Kawhi Leonard won his team of finals. It's not. I think the Lakers are just a tiny bit delusional with how good they think they are because of their record, because of the way they beat bad teams. But they have the same record as the Clippers against good teams, and an 0-2 record against the Lakers. So it's all in favor of the Clippers. I know that the Clippers will not be number 1 seed. They might even be 3 or 4 seed. The Lakers more than likely will be number 1 seed. I'm telling you, when it comes to the playoffs, it's gonna come down to the rosters. And I just think the Clippers.
Right. The game slows down. The rosters usually also shrink. So a lot of times NBA, unless you just have like an absurd amount of depth, like the Milwaukee Bucks did last year, even though it didn't help them win a championship. Unless you have a 9 or 10 man, depth roster, a lot of teams when the playoffs start go down to like a 7 or 8 man rotation, which means guys are playing more minutes, and you've got to really be in shape. So which is why the whole load management comes into play. The Clippers have kind of mastered that this year with letting, even though Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have been dealing with kind of nagging injuries, there have been games where they've given them days off. I know Patrick Beverley has gotten days off, right? The Lakers have been more of the sense of, we're trying to go after the number 1 seed, and then once we secure that, then they could potentially, kind of take their foot off the gas pedal towards the end of the regular season. So 2 different perspectives, 2 different ways that these teams are going about getting into the playoffs. And I think it's a foregone conclusion that we will see the Lakers and the Clippers at some point in the playoffs. Hopefully it's for the Western Conference Finals to get to the NBA Finals. But I hope we see that. I am more of a Lakers fan. Nick is more of a Clippers fan, and I cannot wait to go head-to-head on that.
I cannot wait. Yes. Okay, so we're going to end the podcast here. We got about a little over 5 minutes left to go here. Myles Garrett, his suspension is done. If you don't remember, this was probably one of the biggest stories in the NFL this year, where Myles Garrett took off Mason Rudolph's helmet, the quarterback for the Steelers at the time, and hit him over the head with it, very violently. Terrible scene to watch in an NFL game, and Myles Garrett was suspended indefinitely at that point. What the suspension entailed at that moment was, okay, he's going to suspend the rest of the season. If the Browns end up making the playoffs, which they had a chance at that point, then the playoff games be a little more, and he more than likely should be suspended a little bit for next season because the games need to be rattled up, right? This team, Myles Garrett needs to be affected next year as well. That's not happening. He's done. He essentially got suspended for 6 games and no playoff games, and he's done. And to be honest, me and Jared are going to share the same opinion here. We're shocked. This is another instance of the NFL not knowing what it's doing with suspensions. I brought this up to you before the podcast started. It is amazing to me that Myles Garrett, with a physical assault with a potential deadly weapon on the field, has now been suspended the same amount as Ezekiel Elliott for what? Rumor that he hit It's just amazing how the NFL
just to clarify on that, Ezekiel Elliott got suspended 6 games 2 years ago for being rumored to what did he do? Assault?
Was it assaulting a woman? So it was sexual assault.
Yes,
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
It doesn't matter.
It never went to court.
So for
never
rumors,
went to trial.
for
this
rumors,
was all
Ezekiel
rumors.
Elliott, yes.
Right. That the NFL
Cowboys
said,
didn't make the playoffs that year because of this.
The NFL said they
team.
supposedly had evidence, but like I said, Ezekiel Elliott was never charged, by the police. Yep. He never went to court for anything. And the NFL, you're right, still suspended him for 6 games. And Myles Garrett, in a sense, got the same suspension, you're right, for hitting a player on the football field during a football game on national television with a helmet.
Yep.
Right. That is completely bogus. And until you had mentioned that to me, I did not even think about that situation. This is me taking off my Cowboys hat. This isn't me being biased or anything. the NFL has a major problem with their protocol and their policies and the way that they police their players. There need to be more guidelines, and hopefully there will be. The collective bargaining agreement between the NFL and the NFL Players Association is coming up at the end of this year, and that needs to be renegotiated, or else there will in a sense be a strike and there will be no football. There will be an agreement because, let's face it, there's going to be football, right? It's not like owners are not going to lose millions of dollars, players are not going to lose millions of dollars by not coming to an agreement. But hopefully within this agreement, there will be some clauses and some verbiage that has a better clarification of, if a player does X, they get this type of suspension. If a player does this, they get, you know what I mean? There needs to be better structure and better guidelines, because as of right now, the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell basically have free reign to sit back and do whatever they want, right?
For sure.
They get to be they get to police everyone. They get to be their own. They get to hire their own independent investigators, whatever the hell that means. We don't know where these investigators come from. If they're independently contracted out, what are their backgrounds? We do not know. But the NFL has complete reign on how they police their players. And if I'm the Players Association, I am not signing a contract unless there is a clear message and clear verbal language as to, okay, if a player gets into a situation, this will be their punishment and or fine, right?
It's just, that sounds so simple, right? And the NFL makes it not simple. Like, the fact that, because I know MLB has certain, I think like suspensions for like steroids are all like these increments. It's like 25 games, 82 games, and the whole season.
Okay,
right?
So like first offense, second offense. It's
not like they go, okay, 43 games here.
Yeah.
I'm
going to give you 23 games, just like a random number.
No, exactly. So it's concerning, and we probably wouldn't even be complaining about this stuff because, like, the NBA, I believe, does the same thing, but we don't complain about that because they make good decisions.
Because it's structured, and you're like, okay, you know what? That makes sense. This player screwed up. There's the rightful punishment. Ezekiel Elliott, we're not saying that he did not do anything, but there was no evidence that he did do what people were saying he did. Yeah. He never went to court for anything. He still got 6 games.
Guess where there is evidence? Myles Garrett hit Mason Rudolph in the head with a helmet.
You can go on YouTube right now and pull it up.
Because here's the thing, right? Like, there's obviously, you could say self-defense, right? Like, we know Mason Rudolph probably, he did stuff,
He was an instigator.
He might have said some stuff.
He was an instigator.
But what we saw was Myles Garrett choose to go too far and hit him in the head with his helmet, right? That's not what Mason Rudolph did. It's not what anybody's done. I mean, like, even when I don't want to compare it to this, but, like, when you look at, like, what Ndamukong Suh has done the last couple of years with, like, stepping on players' hands, that's not worse than taking a guy's helmet off his head and hitting him in the head.
Could have killed him.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And the fact that he's going to get the same amount of games as Ezekiel Elliott for that, BS, I almost said the word right there, that BS that happened, it's just almost funny.
So let's take the Ezekiel Elliott part out of this equation right now and just focus on Myles Garrett. And I think here's the big thing right now, right? Up until this morning, when the NFL came out with their statement that they were reinstating Myles Garrett, I don't know about you, but I almost forgot about Myles Garrett.
I did too.
Right? He's a great player, and it's not like he was never going to play in the league again. I had assumed that at some point next year he was going to get back on the field. But I had forgot about what happened, right? What the NFL just did was they went like that. They gave him a slap on the wrist with a 6-game suspension. If the NFL would have upheld their suspension going into the 2020 season where Myles Garrett would have had to miss at least the opening game, maybe 2 or 3 games, I think it would have been a refresher for other NFL players to say, okay, these guys mean business. We cannot do that. Because, and I am in no way saying that any other player is going to go out and try to hit a player with their helmet. But you do that, and all you do is miss 6 games, and then the next season you get to come right back. You don't miss any off-season activities. You get to train during training camp, all that stuff. You get to be with the team. Like, 6-game punishment, that's it. I mean, it's a little ridiculous in the fact that, like, oh, okay, poof, it's done.
Okay, so like, and if you turn to baseball a little bit with the Astros, right? It's completely different, but also it's like almost not as bad in some ways because it's not physically assaulting a guy's head, right? But the Astros punishment although you could say something needs to happen to the players, the Astros punishment was pretty severe. And people are not going to cheat the way the Astros and potentially Red Sox did now. But like you're saying, players, let's say they find a helmet, let's say they take the Gatorade thing, let's say they find some sharp object. Why, if it's only going to be 6 games, that doesn't ward people away from doing horrendous things, right? For example, like, if you go to jail, right, for a crime, the sentence is only 6 years. There's a chance you might do that crime again. If it comes to the point where you feel like you have to, right, you're gonna be like, okay, whatever. I know I'm only gonna be in the joint for 6 years, right? I might actually do it again. If they say, oh, life sentence, right? Oh, it's 25 years, right? That's 30 years. You're gonna be like, I'm not doing that again, right? If they would have suspended Myles Garrett for 10 games, 12 games, 16 games, he ain't never doing that again, and no other player is.
Interesting take
yeah,
there, Nick.
But I know I probably shouldn't have gotten those legs, but it's Myles Garrett needed to be suspended for longer than this, and
we can both agree on that.
I think the best example is the fact that he got the same suspension as Ezekiel Elliott, and what Ezekiel Elliott did, which was nothing, is not comparable to physical assault with a weapon. Right, it's just not the same.
So in the end, Myles Garrett is reinstated. He's back with the Browns. He gets to be there for all their off-season activities, training camp, and he will, barring any setbacks with injuries, he will be on the field week 1 for the Cleveland Browns.
It's not good. I hate it.
And that news just broke this morning, and we wanted to share that with you guys before we wrapped up the show.
Absolutely. But yeah, we are wrapping up the show here. Earlier we talked about the Betts David Price deal, the Dodgers, the Joc Pederson Ross Stripling deal not happening for the Angels, what that means about their owner, and we also dove into the NBA trade deadline a little bit earlier in the show, specifically Marcus Morris going to the Clippers and a lack of Lakers deals. But as far as this podcast goes, we are done. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
We will see you next week here on the Cover